Today, in our Meet the Luminaries series, we have the rare privilege of conversing with a visionary whose work bridges scholarship, creativity, and cultural wisdom. Professor Nandini Sahu, Vice-Chancellor of Hindi University, West Bengal. Professor Sahu is one of the most celebrated voices in contemporary Indian English literature, a poet, scholar, and Amazon best-selling author whose oeuvre stands as a confluence of intellect and imagination. A triple gold medalist in English literature, she completed her doctorate under the guidance of the late Professor Niranjan Mohanty at Visva Bharati Santiniketan and has since carved a luminous path through academia and art alike. Her contributions to literature and education have been recognized with numerous honors, including the Michael Madhusudan Academy Award in 2024, Lifetime Achievement Award, SAFE 2024, Tagore Samman 2025, and the Gold Medal for the Hon'ble Vice-President of India 2019 for her outstanding contributions to English studies. Author and editor of more than 23 books, Professor Sahu's creative and critical works, including The Other Voice, Silver Poems on My Lips, Sita, Medusa, and the Post-Colonial Space, Writing the Self and the Nation, explore themes of mythology, womanhood, post-colonial identity, and cultural memory. Her scholarship encompasses Indian literature, American literature, indigenous knowledge systems, folk studies, and Hindu studies. As former director of the School of Foreign Languages and professor of English at IGNOU, and now as Vice-Chancellor, she continues to design academic programs that blend intellectual rigor with humanistic depth. She's also the founder and chief editor of the Interdisciplinary Journal of Literature and Language, a platform devoted to advancing literary dialogue. Through her poetry and her scholarship, Professor Nandini Sahu reminds us that literature is not merely written, it is lived, questioned, and renewed through every generation. It is a true honor to welcome to Meet the Luminaries a poet of grace, a scholar of substance, and a thinker of extraordinary vision, Professor Nandini Sahu. Professor Sahu, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Irene. Thanks for this very generous introduction.
It's an honor for us having you here. Professor Sahu, your journey from a student of English literature to the Vice-Chancellor of Hindi University is a rare confluence of scholarship, leadership, and creativity. How do you reconcile the worlds of academia and poetry within your own identity?
Well, Irene, first of all, I must express my gratitude, my deepest gratitude for my friend and a visionary, Preet, and then you, Irene, and the entire team of the International Academy of the interview series that you are conducting. And I'm very happy to be a part of the series where you have taken interviews with various important people who are contributing to the society in their own individual capacities and who have been writers and thinkers and philosophers. In my small little way, I have been trying to contribute to the society as a creative writer, a teacher, and a folklorist. I have been teaching since 2 decades or more. And then I have been writing poetry since I was 7 years old. In one of my interviews, I have already shared that when I saw the farmers working in the fields when we were enjoying ourselves, on a rainy day, I started writing for the farmers. I wrote some poetry for them. I wrote some short essay kind of short pieces for them, and then some kind of awareness was there in me that these are the people because of whom we get the food on our plates. Then I sent those to some local news. I mean, I didn't send. My father sent those to the local newspapers. My father, who was a school teacher, we were six girls in rural Odisha, and my father had the conviction to give education to the six girls, despite the challenges in rural India, and then my father sent those to some local newspapers, and who were very happy to read those. They published those. So I saw my name in black and white when I was 7 years old. Uh, in a poem for the farmers, some short essay kind of stuff, or some editorial kind of stuff for the farmers. And since then, I have been writing, but I always believe that a writer is not a war juggler. Rather, a writer should contribute to the society tangibly. The writers should be deeply connected with the society, and the contribution should be practical, not just the juggling of words. My journey has always been one of the dialogues between, the intellects and the emotions, scholarship and sensitivity, logic and lyricism. I think of logic, but I try to express my logic through lyrical poetry. And then academia gives me a structure. Had I not been a teacher, had I not been a professor at Indira Gandhi National Open University, the world's largest university, where we design and develop courses for the subaltern, for the marginalized people, we call ourselves the People's University. So, had I not been teaching there last 2 decades, then probably I would not have been what I am today. I developed a sense of empathy, compassion for the subaltern, the marginalized, for people who missed out on mainstream education, and later on they came to open and distance education, online education. And then during COVID, we were very active. We taught in a very meaningful way. So IGNO connected me with a space with some rigorous thought processes and a responsibility, sense of responsibility to shape minds. As a creative writer, poetry gives me breath, intuition, and freedom. And then poetry and then social work, poetry and creative writing, I mean, poetry and teaching, they are not opposites, but they are complementary to each other. The university for me is not merely an institution. Wherever I go, now I am in Hindi University as a vice chancellor, as an administrator, but also I take my lectures every single day in Hindi University or otherwise. So the teacher in me, the folklorist in me, the administrator in me, they go together. They are in tandem with each other. They are not opposing each other. I have never felt any challenge of being a poet because I am a vice chancellor, of or being a vice chancellor because I am a poet. People ask me, how do you manage to seamlessly connect the two things? Probably the key point is humanity. If you have that humanitarian attitude, you look at your colleagues not as people working under you, but rather as people working with you. I always tell my colleagues or my research scholars that nobody is working under me. They introduce themselves that I am working under Professor Nandini Sahu. I say, no, you are working with me. I learned so much from you, from your experience, from your research. So when you think that you are working with people, then I think things are easy for you. One needs power only when one wants to harm people or threaten or do some kind of, create some fear in people. If you don't want to create that fear in people, then power is not required. Love will do the job. So wherever I go, as a teacher, as a folklorist, a poet, or as a vice chancellor, or as a research guide, my research scholars, you can talk to them. So for me, everything is a living text. Life is a living text, constantly being written and rewritten through empathy and imagination. Poetry, in the one hand, becomes my way of understanding the human condition that academia theorizes. To reconcile academia, theory, and poetry, and to live with the dual awareness of discipline and dream, I think one has to work very hard, and I have been trying to work hard. The vice chancellor in me plans and builds. I do a lot of planning, like a lecture series, or like the shifting to a new building, or creating a research department. So these are the planning parts of my job, and then building parts of my job. But the poet in me listens and recreates. When my colleagues come to me with some of their new poems, new writings, I listen to them very carefully with lot of, a lot of empathy and lot of love for them. And we are going to launch our new journal, which is Hindi University Journal of Interdisciplinary Studies. We started the journal, I think, in March or April. I joined in January, and in March or April, we started the journal. The first issue is ready now. We are going to launch it in the month of December. Hujis, a journal with ISSN number, and very, very interesting and very well researched papers contributed by many people from Hindi University and otherwise. So, this kind of continuous synthesis between administration, creative writing, editing, taking out journals, and teaching, all of these keep me alive to both the inner and the outer worlds. So, basically, I'm a very happy person. I love life. Probably that's what gets me going.
Absolutely wonderful. And you have expressed it brilliantly, as you said, that everything is intertwined in a magnificent way based on the mighty values of humanity. It was so beautiful and also very impressive. Not that you just started writing at the age of 7, but you were published at the age of 7. I mean, this is something perhaps for a for a Guinness record. I don't know if it has happened anywhere else in the world, but in your case. So you have been widely published across continents and genres, from poetry to critical theory. What inner force or philosophy has sustained this lifelong dialogue between intellect and imagination?
Dear Writers Capital Foundation International, uh, thank you so much for reading my work so carefully, because the kind of questions that you are asking me, or Dr. Preet has designed this interview or the questions, I can see that you have done a thorough research on not just my writings. You have looked at the writings and the scenario of creative writing in India and otherwise, and then you have prepared this dialogue for me. As far as your question related to intellect and imagination is concerned, Irene, at the heart of my work lies some kind of a belief system which you may call sadhana. In Indian knowledge systems, you call it sadhana, the disciplined pursuit of excellence through self realization. I'm very self critical. If I commit a small mistake, I repeat that to myself, and sometimes my son he tells me that you're very self-violent. It's not self-violence exactly. To be self-critical uh, is a very welcome thing for any individual, as I believe, because you introspect. If you are self-critical, you don't do negative things. You are a human being. Sometimes some negative thoughts might come to you. Sometimes some kind of self-righteousness can come to you. During such situations, one has to do introspection. One has to make introspection. I see no hierarchy between the intellectual and the imaginative worlds. Both are sacred ways of knowing everything. My philosophy has been rooted in the Upanishads idea of unity. Tattvamasi, isn't it? Thou art that, Tattvamasi. Every act of writing, teaching, and research, they are steps towards understanding the oneness of the existence. When you look at this planet, this beautiful planet Earth, you think about human beings, plants, and animals. Uh, we used to think that human beings are the best creations, the best species on the planet. But COVID taught us otherwise. During COVID, human beings were locked inside the houses and the animal world was free. The plants were glowing and growing. So slowly people became very conscious towards Anthropocene kind of subjects, where we started, at least the intellectuals, the researchers, the scholars and writers, they started thinking about the oneness of the green, the blue, and the human world. That is how, in our literature departments, now we are doing a lot of research on various literary theories and pedagogical issues, like we are talking about green cultural studies, The environment, we are thinking about ocean humanities, the blue, thinking about water, the protection of rivers, the ocean, and how the blue and the green, they find a space in literary texts. Looking at folk literature and culture studies, classical literatures, indigenous knowledge systems, Indian knowledge systems, and even I have done a lot of research on Native American women's poetry, a study of their cultural ecology. Joy Harjo, Leslie Merman Silko. So those kind of Native American poets, even they have been talking about the green, the blue, inclusivity and flexibility in their poetry. As a counterpart of those, look at Indian literature, the Bhasha literatures or the regional literatures. People have been writing about important issues like green studies, blue studies, post colonial literature, postmodernism, gender studies, women's studies, masculinity studies, LGBTQ, which is called queer studies, and then medical humanities, hospitality studies, hospitality. So many new areas of research and pedagogy are slowly coming into literature departments, at least into English departments as far as I know. And English departments have started talking about things beyond only British literature or the so-called canonical or the mainstream. Though I'm trained in British literature, I have been teaching British Romantic poetry and then American poetry, American drama. I have designed multiple courses like MEG 16, 17, 18 for my university. If you look at our website, American poetry, American drama, British Romantic literature, post colonial literature. So these are the mainstream or the canonical studies that I have designed and written the material. But at the same time, I had the blessing of designing the country's first MA program in folklore and culture studies with almost 20,000 pages of study material, which is open access material. If you go to our website and check e-Gyan Kosh and download the study material of MAFCS, MA in Folklore and Culture Studies, you will see that we have been talking about folk literature across the countries, across the regions. We have written study material and we have been teaching on Native American literature and the folk poetry, Indigenous and Aboriginal Australian literature, Canadian studies and folklore, Hispanic folklore, folklore from South Africa, folklore from other many parts of South Asian countries. So folklore has actually humbled me. When I read the folklore and the indigenous studies of all these countries and across the disciplines, I got to know that human generations or human life has always been one and the same. We create boundaries, regions, countries, so many mental and emotional boundaries we create. But when it comes to academia, you look at the practices, the food habits, the emotions, the growth, and even relationships. You compare one folklore of India with one folk tradition of any other country, say South Africa, you will be surprised that during one period of time when there was no travel studies, people related to travel studies, they are talking to us now that even when there is no travel, or maybe people are traveling on foot, there was no locomotion, there was no aircraft, thousands and thousands of years ago. But you know, Irene, the interesting part is food, lifestyle were all the same. In India, in Native America, in Australia, their Aboriginal literature and Indian folk literature, then Cinderella folklore. You look at the Hispanic folk literature, Russian folk literature, you can read Vladimir Prof and Russian folk literature. You will see that there was a bridge between mind and spirit, knowledge and compassion in all traditional knowledge systems. The inner force that sustains me is faith in language and ethical art. I'm a person of folklore, so I have done a lot of research on language death. When I designed this program for my university, MA in folk literature, I did one course on language death. And Irene, you know, it's so interesting that initially in the world there were 6 lakh languages, and today there are only 6,000 or so. So what happened to rest of the languages then? They died a natural death in the absence of anyone preserving them, anyone documenting them. So that is where the role of folklorists or researchers like you and me come as very important tasks. You don't have to really toil the soil, you have to love your subject. So when I wrote those study materials or those papers on language death, I traveled across the globe. I went to many places, like I went to Madagascar, I went to Nepal, to Mauritius, and many places where a lot of dying language groups and people are still alive. Endangered language groups are still alive. I took interviews with them. It was a humbling experience. I didn't understand their language. They didn't understand my kind of English. So what we did, I took some interpreters. Like Jhumpa Lahiri would say, they are interpreter of melodies. So I took some interpreter of languages with me to those people. And then we convinced them that yours is an endangered language and I'm going to document it. They could understand my language of love and they expressed through poetry. They sang their songs to me. If you ask them a question, introduce yourself, how will they introduce? They hardly know any introduction about themselves. But if you tell them, oh, you sing so beautifully, can you sing a song for me? Then they will ask you, the interpreter will ask them to sing a song for me. So they will ask, what kind of song? So maybe sing something on the planet, or sing something about your love life or your children, or any kind of ritual. And within the rituals of many indigenous communities are also the same. If you look at creation myth as a theoretical or the pedagogical background, the creation myth actually talks about not exactly or simplistically about the creation, but it talks about the growth, the development, our progeny, our past, our present, our future. And the indigenous groups, most of them, they have similar traditions, similar linguistic patterns, food habits, dressing, skin colors. After looking at all of that, looking at a vast creation through folklore and culture studies, I became aware about how small I am in this very, very large and vast and very exclusive, very inclusive universe. Where do I stand? And probably that is where I started being a researcher and being a human being.
How beautiful. Actually, it is impressive to see how a woman like you has poured her soul into work, into all those languages that are under extinction, or actually you're trying to document everything to keep it alive. And I hold two key words that you have mentioned: unity and humanity. I'm sure that this goes through your whole work, and this is wonderful, that because also it is one of the core things that we have, one of the core terms that we also have in the Writers Capital Foundation mission and vision under our leader, our visionary leader, Mr. Preet Nambiar. How wonderful to say all that, and we all feel connected through this. So wonderful.
Yes.
So, my dear, what does poetry mean to you beyond language as a medium for truth, identity, and transformation?
Yeah, Irene, from Writers Capital Foundation, Mr. Preet, who you mentioned, he has always impacted, influenced me in more than one ways. His ideas of empathy, of connecting with people, of thinking about people rather than thinking about himself, taking care of his daughter, uh, many things regarding Mr. Preet definitely have impacted me, influenced me. So I'm so grateful to him for having me here with you, of course. And as far as your question is concerned, Irene, poetry for me is, it's not just a form of art. It's a form of being and living. Poetry transcends language and becomes a spiritual practice for me. It's a way to unearth buried truths. There can be hidden truths. There can be alternative truths. Poetry is a way for me to go there. In a world fragmented by noise and speed, so much of cacophony here and there, everyone is speaking loud and clear, everyone has an agenda. But poetry doesn't have any agenda. Poetry offers stillness, it's a moment of reckoning, understanding oneself. So, poetry allows me to voice my silences, and mostly the silences of women, those who have been silenced, they don't have a voice. Look at my poetry collection, Sukoma, and other poems. I talk about a tribal woman who doesn't have a voice of her own. Or speaking for nature, I connect to the ecofeminists. My poetry collection, Sita, is entirely about ecofeminism, a feministic voice who is deeply connected with ecology. By ecofeminism, you know, uh, I can go on and on about ecofeminism, but if you ask me what exactly do you mean by ecofeminism, if it is a classroom, I would say that it's very vast. Ecofeminism talks about environment, about protecting the planet. Women basically take care of livestock and preservation. Ecofeminism connects women with nature. It's a parallel between women and nature. Ecofeminists, they talk about environment, about literature, about food and livestock for all, language preservation, protecting the senior citizens, protecting children, talking about the tribes and the folks, discussing folk literatures, and employment for all, food for all. Here I am reminded about one institution called Samanvita, from where I have come from, from Udayagiri. There is a place called Samanvita where they preserve food and they create employment for women. I see women who do not know what is feminism, but they are actually practicing feminists. They know how to economically make themselves independent. They know how to empower their children. They don't know that they are empowering their children. They know no, even they have no idea they are contributing to the economy of the state, but they are doing it. So ecofeminism somehow talks about those kind of people through their forgotten myths and through their marginalized histories. In history, there is something very interesting. History of a nation is usually written by the winner, say Alexander the Great or Napoleon Bonaparte. The winner, he makes some of his people write his history or her history. Now, what happens to the history of the so-called loser? I said so-called because actually no one is a loser in life. So, what happens to the history of the so-called loser? The losers or the weak persons or the subalterns' history is written by ethnomusicologists. They are a part of history. Ethnomusicologists, they sing the song of the loser or the weak or the poor, the subaltern through folk poetry. And to me, poetry and folk poetry are one and the same. In many of my poems, you will find a hint of mythology and folklore. In fact, each poem that I write is a story. I can never write. I think I can never write free verse on any particular idea. Many people do that. I read their poetry with admiration, but for me, every poem is a story in the form of a verse. I take a story, I give the language of poetry to it. Then every poem for me is not just art for art's sake. To me, poetry is always art for life's sake. Art should be connected to life, otherwise it's word jugglery. It's like playing with words. So beyond aesthetics, for me poetry is an act of resistance and renewal. If you want to resist in a subdued way, in a very euphonic way, then probably poetry gives you a voice. Poetry restores my faith that words can actually heal and that imagination can still be revolutionary. Look at Sita, my poetry collection. Sita was a silent satyagrahi, non-violent revolutionary. She never hit them back. Rather, she created a platform where she took care of her children all by herself. She took care of the students in the Valmiki ashram. She was a mother, she was a teacher, she was a great cook, she was a healer, healing touch. She used to touch the animals and heal them. So to me, Sita was the original ecofeminist. I write that kind of poetry where people have a voice through literature, through poetry, or through social work, rather than a voice that is loud and clear, uh, full of sound and story. I do not do that. Through poetry, identity is not a static thing, it's a flowing river, a river that is evolving, questioning, and becoming. So to me, poetry is my social mobilization platform. I have been practicing that.
Wonderful. So poetry is flowing through you, through your soul, and is expressed throughout all your life. How wonderfully said. And you mentioned already Sita. You have two long poetic works, Sita and Medusa, that revisit mythic and feminine archetypes through a modern lens, of course. What compels you to return to these figures, and how do you reinterpret them for the contemporary reader?
Fine, this is rather a very, very important question, Irene. This is Sita. It was published in 2014. It's already 10 years now, and the reprint is not there. After the death of the publisher, the reprint hasn't come anymore. And now it was 25 cantos originally. Now I have added 25 more cantos, and a 50 cantos, double of this, is coming next month. It will be published. It's a Sita, a long narrative poem. So I have added some more points of view. I have interviewed more Ramayana scholars. Sita, the character, is inspired by Sita from the Ramayana. When I wrote this poetry book, I have given everything that was in my mind about the women, women's issues, nature, the subaltern, as I have been discussing. My Sita is not a brooding, crying, or complaining woman that destiny did something wrong with her. Rather, she has taken destiny in her stride. She is a free thinker, she is an independent woman. She knows how to take care of herself and her children and the society. She knows how to make best use of the opportunities and the challenges. So, my Sita has been a woman of substance. Please allow me to read how I interpret Sita. May I? A few lines. Okay. Uh, so, this is in the first part of Sita up to Canto 25. Sita says that I am Prakriti, born of and fading into Mother Nature. I am Shakti, phenomenal destroyer of Ravan. I am grace. I stand for mercy, bounty, and redemption. I am the ultimate woman, the glorious mother of love push. I am nature. I have inestimable moods and assortments. I am power. I have innumerable appearances on earth. So, I have created Tripadi and Saptapadi as the rhyme schemes, and a very, very long poem. I think the second volume, I mean, Sita, a long narrative poem with 50 cantos, will be nothing more than 500 pages. So I have created dialogues between Sita and contemporary women. In one of the cantos, Sita is having a dialogue with a woman like, say, Kalpana Chawla. How there is a Sita-ness in her. Probably Sita-ness is there in you and me. When you are inquisitive, you want to know new things. When you're open for free thinking, you are Sita. Even many men are ecofeminists have Sita-ness in them. In fact, men should know that women admire those kind of men where the woman in them or the feminist in them is very active. So maybe those kind of men are usually admired by women. And this is my most current poetry book, Medusa. And this is published just a couple of months ago. And I am so blessed that within 2 months of its publication, multiple book discussion sessions have been happening on Medusa. People are interpreting Medusa. They are reviewing. Very, very famous journals all over the world are carrying reviews of Medusa. Book discussions are going on, and some university from South India, I should not name it right now until the syllabus is in place on the table, but they have already taken Medusa as a part of their MA English course. So they have started teaching Medusa, and the syllabus is under preparation. And I mean, the final approvals are there, but I know that it is already approved. So I'm very glad and fortunate that my readers have been reading my poetry with a lot of concern and a lot of love. I have been receiving acceptance from my dear readers. Even this book, Medusa, this is about Medusa myth, Greek mythology. Everyone knows the story of Medusa, how she is also a case of victim being blamed. She was the victim, but she was being blamed by the world. Her hair turns into snake, and people look at her as a negative character. In Indian mythology, there is someone called Ahilya. She was doomed to remain a stone for years and years for no fault of hers, for no mistake. So Medusa is also that kind of a character to me. So I have tried to take out the many layers of a woman's character. Usually, in media, women are represented as the goddess, pure virtue in their character, or the demoness. But in between the two, the goddess and the demoness, the real women like you and me are missing. Nobody talks about our kind of characters. We are real flesh and blood women. We have our strengths and our weaknesses. We have our good days and bad days. We have love and hatred. We have acceptance. We have fear. We have anger. Sometimes we feel like giving up. Next moment we wake up and then we want to challenge the points again. So real women like you and me, having real flesh and blood, are missing from literature and media. I have tried to take women like us, women like Irene and Nandini in Medusa. There are many poems where I talk about women like you and me, who can cry, who can shout, who can fight, but who can also love and accept, who can forgive and forget. So, Medusa is something that I try to celebrate women through. There are poems on Dushyant and Shakuntala. A lot of mythological characters are there. Dushyant and Shakuntala, it's a long poem. And then there are poems like Topoi. Topoi is, some kind of traditional Odia mythical story where this is the poem. The Topoi myth, so I have given a postscript here. The Topoi myth is a traditional Odia story from the rich maritime history of Odisha, the region where I belong to, Odisha, about a woman who prays to goddess Mangala to get her brothers back and avenge her suffering. Topo is treated poorly and waits for her brothers to return, but is only supported by her youngest sister in law. While wandering, she sees girls worshipping goddess Mangala and prays to her for help. Topoi offers Kuda, Kuda broken rice to the goddess and promises to fast on Sundays. Her prayers are answered and her brothers return. The brothers dress up Topoi as goddess and then they send her to the ship to meet their wives. To avenge her suffering, she was asked to cut off the noses of all the wives except the youngest, but she forgives. So Topoi is again a character from mythology. I take such forgotten characters from mythology and folklore. Then I try to make them contemporary. I give some contemporary value systems to them. Why Sita is still so contemporary? Look at the freedom struggle of India. Mahatma Gandhi, who was a satyagrahi during the non-violence movement, in one of his letters, he has written that I admire the qualities of goddess Sita when she was a silent satyagrahi. She didn't hit them back with the arms and ammunitions, but the non-violence that she was committed to created ripples. And Mahatma Gandhi was also a non-violent satyagrahi. He was the father of the nation. Today, if we have independent India, then probably this satyagrahi attitude of Mahatma Gandhi and the people of that generation, they have definitely contributed to it. So those are the things that are slowly being forgotten. I try to bring them back, and then I try to present them to the younger generation with the things that they like to hear or read. In Ahilya's Waiting, one of my poems, my Ahilya says that I don't want to wait for Lord Sri Ram to come and touch me and then redeem me from a stone to a woman once again because of some sin that I didn't commit. She says, I haven't committed any sin. So I need not the touch, I don't need the touch of any Lord Sri Ram. But in case he wants to touch me and redeem me, it should be like she wants to demythify Lord Sri Ram and says that a man and a woman are complementary to each other. They complete each other, and touch is the metaphor. Touch is the therapy. So we have to touch each other's heart and soul, and subsequently, maybe the body of each other. But the process should be like healing each other, not like one is the healer, redeemer, and the other one is the victim. Because she was not the victim, she never committed any mistake. And the modern generation, younger generation, they are very upright. They want to hear these kind of contemporary stories. So I try to contemporize mythology and folklore, and with a lot of empathy and uh, good language. I try to present those to them. My poetry is being taught in universities, but it is admired by the three generations. People who are in their 80s or 90s, they read my poetry because it's about Sita, Ahilya, Draupadi. They are happy to read them. I have a book on Hindu studies, foundations and frameworks. It's about liberal secularism in Hindu literary pedagogy. So they like to read my books. Then my generation, who are in the 40s and 50s, they like to read because they are very research oriented, very theoretically sound. And the younger generation, they like to read my poetry because they can connect, because here I'm not trying to create characters who are crying or brooding. Rather, I want to reclaim Sita kind of characters from the margins of the epic, and then I take them to the contemporary lifestyle of people. So, for the contemporary readers, these figures become mirrors. For the three generations that I told, my poetry can be a mirror, reflecting our own questions about identity, politics, body politics, agency, and freedom. Mythology for me is not a relic of the past, it's a living archive of human consciousness. So, my poetry is the poetry of human consciousness.
Absolutely. It is also the core of your success because, as you said, your poetry is directed to all kinds of generations. And this is also a kind of poetry that should be called diachronic because it brings back all those archetypes from the myths and renews them, revitalizes them, and brings them to the contemporaries. It's important to have all these in mind. And I also keep another key word that you said, healing. Healing and touching of souls first. This is the most important thing. And I'm sure that through your poetry, a lot of people will be inspired, are inspired, and will be healed. And that's the most profound thing. In your extensive research and writings on Indian and post-colonial literatures, how do you see the Indian literary voice evolving in global spaces? Has it truly found its own center, or is it still seeking recognition in a world long dominated by the Western canon?
Well, Liren, what an interesting question. I'm so glad you asked it. As a person and as a poet myself, or as a teacher, I don't see anyone being in the margin or in the periphery. I think literature is a voice, and all the literary voices of India or the or West, of Asia or the West, uh, they have similar kind of concerns. Indian literary voice is vibrant, it's plural, and it is self-assured now. It started with Torudat Sarojini Naidu kind of writers, the Dutt family albums, and all those pre-independent India, and Rabindranath Tagore and all of them. They wrote such wonderful poetry. But slowly coming to the contemporary scenario, there are some writers like Salman Rushdie or Bikram Seth or even Arundhati Roy, Jhumpa Lahiri, many of them, Anita Desai, they liberated language. English language became more fluid, more contemporary. And now in the coming to the modern generation, our generation of writers, uh, we are not so conscious about creating language which is very ornamental, which is full of metaphors or Western images. We try to create images which are very Indian. We know that we are very Indian. Our accent, our pronunciation might be different from the West, from where the English language has come. We don't mind that. We are writing poetry not just for India, but for the entire world. I have traveled so much, and everywhere Indian writing in English is being taught, it's being taken very, very seriously. And when you ask me about India, I must emphasize on one thing: translation studies. There is nothing like Indian folk literature in English. There is something called Indian writing in English. About the writers I just mentioned, there are many, actually, hundreds. I just mentioned a few names. There are hundreds. Uh, but if you come to the folk literature scenario, there is nothing like Indian folk literature in English. So, to study folk literature, we have to depend on translation. As a teacher, I always tell in my classrooms, and as an administrator, I tell my teachers that look at the NEP document, the National Education Policy document. It talks about ABCD of languages. It talks about family languages. Every family has a language. It talks about the state languages. Every state has one mainstream language and multiple folk and tribal languages. India has 24 scheduled languages and more than 7,000 folk and tribal languages. So imagine, without translation, what would happen to us? We will be nowhere. But yes, the condition and the position of English in India is very bright. Almost all the universities and educational institutions have English. Everyone knows how to converse or write or read in English, and the Indian languages are taken very seriously through translation. In Hindi University, where I am the Vice Chancellor, we have a department of translation studies, and the students and the teachers are doing very well. They are translating seminal texts from Indian Bhasha literatures to English and Hindi and Bangla and other languages. And the state Odisha, where I belong to, people have started translating very important texts and they are coming up in a big way. So, Indian writing is going from imitation to motivation, from seeking validation to asserting its own epistemologies. Indian writers have become very, very confident. However, the journey is still ongoing. The shadow of the Western canon still looms large, so universities are trying to decolonize the departments. I am not a big fan of decolonization if it comes to removing some subjects from the syllabus that we have been reading. Like we have been reading British literature, American literature, Australian studies, Canadian studies, Western literary theories in our classrooms. Since 20, 25 years, we have been reading those. Suddenly, if somebody will ask me to stop reading those and avoid Western literary theories in my classroom, I will not be in a position to do it. I cannot do it. But yes, the new literatures are coming up in a big way. We are introducing cultural studies, culture studies, folk literatures, traditional literatures, indigenous studies through translation. We are introducing them in the English classrooms and also the other subjects like Hindi departments. In Hindi University, we have a Hindi department where they are not just reading Hindi literature from Premchand to modern and all of that. They are also reading other bhasha literatures in Hindi translation. So languages are flowing freely into each other. Languages are becoming river in India. Our task is, as scholars and writers, our responsibilities are to decolonize not just the syllabus but ourselves, and to listen to the languages, the stories, and the cosmologies of our land, and then to teach those things through Indian literature, especially in translation through global conversations. Uh, so, Indian writing in English or Indian literature in Bhasha studies or different languages, they are becoming very confident and very flexible and inclusive. Probably it's a very promising period. That's what I understand.
Absolutely. I loved the metaphor that translation is the river through which one language or one dialect meets the other and they become a whole. And as far as the English language is concerned, I'm sure that you have embellished it with the beautiful folklore and the beautiful images of your country and the brilliance of your souls and taken it to further higher levels too. This is absolutely true, I'm sure. Now, you have been the recipient of several prestigious awards, including the Michael Madhusudan Academy Award, Tagore Samman, and a gold medal from the Vice-President of India for your contributions to English studies. What do these honors mean to you as a poet, scholar, and educator?
Oh, Irene, thank you so much. Uh, I would rather say I'm not an award person. These awards somehow they came to me. People wanted to give those to me. These days, if somebody offers me an award, I tell them that you should give them to youngsters. I would rather give away an award rather than taking it. I say those kind of things, and many awards I'm giving away rather than taking. But yes, out of all the awards that you mentioned, uh, to me, the best one is the Vice President's Gold Medal for my contribution to English studies. After I designed the MA program in Folklore and Culture Studies, I received that award and I was humbled. I like that. I respect that award very much. About translation that you mentioned, Irene, this is my book, Shedding the Metaphors. It is a collection of my short stories. It was published last year, and immediately after its publication, it became Amazon's bestseller. And then somebody translated some stories from this, and then Nandini Sahu ke Chuninda Kahaniya, one collection came out. Now Shedding the Metaphors is a complete book, is coming in Hindi translation and Bangla translation, and some French and German translations are also there. People have been translating my stories and they have been teaching those in their universities. My stories are so different from my poetry. My stories are usually on very critical issues of the society, like the girl child. One of the stories, that elusive orgasm, is about a girl child who was, victimized since her childhood, and then how when she grows up, her life becomes very complex. And then Shadow of a Shadow is one story where I'm talking about the lesbian relationship between two women, how the female bonding, the emotional closeness, and later on led to some kind of physical closeness, and what happened to those girls during 90s when nobody had heard the word lesbian. What happened to those two girls? Then about the political scenario of Odisha, one of the stories I have written, a political satire. There is one story, The Alternative Masculinity, where it's a humor and a satire on toxic masculinity. So my stories are very much on very critical and important issues. As far as awards are concerned, awards are very humbling recognitions of one's journey, but they are not the destination. To me, my awards are not the destination, they are just the journey. I enjoy my awards. I am happy when somebody gives it to me, but also I'm happier if I give away awards to youngsters. I'm trying to establish an award in the name of my late father, Krishna Chandra Sahu Memorial Award. I'm trying to do it very soon in near future. My father, who was an educationist who educated us all the six girls, he gave us education in rural India. So my father's soul would definitely be very happy if I give an award in his name to the best girl student, female student of university. So as a scholar, the awards renew my faith in truth seeking. But as an educator, they also remind me that the real award lies in the happiness, the spark, the brightness that I see in my students, my research scholars, and my colleagues. So every honor, every award is a deeper call for me to humility, to greater contribution. Every award makes me more responsible towards my job.
It's so profound, devoting all your awards to the younger generation, as you
Yes.
indirectly said it, that you like giving more than receiving.
Yes, I like giving.
Absolutely, absolutely wonderful. And uh, also, this is very good and touching about what you mentioned of the award in the name of your father.
Yes.
Absolutely touching. Congratulations for the inception, and I'm sure that it's going to be realized very soon. Wonderful. Now,
Thank you.
as the author and editor of more than 23 books, including The Other Voice, Silver Poems on My Lips, and Sita, that we already mentioned, your long narrative poem, how has your writing evolved over time? Do you feel your poetry has become more philosophical or more personal?
Irene, my poetry, my writing, I won't say poetry, my writing, because I'm writing a lot of stories. I'm working on a novel as well. I think it will be published early next year. Being God's Wife, which is a memoir, I'm working on that. It will be a book of 300 pages, autobiographical little bit. So my writing has gradually become both more philosophical and more personal, because the personal is political. Any personal issue that Irene and Nandini may discuss as two women, it may be a personal issue between the two of us, but it definitely is political if you connect it with gender. with gender politics. So early in my early writings, I wrote out of my observation. Like I used to be very, very sensitive, very emotional when I started writing. I had that kind of a restlessness in me when I wrote when I was very young. But now I write out of realization, out of devotion, or my commitment. My writing is more of social commitment than just writing for me. Experience has taught me that the personal is political, as I said, and the philosophical is emotional. Over a period of time, my language has become stronger, quieter, and deeper. I use less ornamental words. I write with more connection with human hearts. The metaphors have become leaner. I don't use too much of metaphors. See, I'm shedding the metaphors now. The silences have become more eloquent. I see my poetry now as a dialogue between the seen and the unseen. It's a journey towards wholeness. So I think as a writer, I try to be maturer than what I was. I look at my early poetry, the silence and the other voice, and I think, oh my God, who wrote this? But I have written those poems. I cannot disown them. I have written, I have published. People have done PhD after PhD on those. More than 190 MPhil dissertations, PhD thesis, and research papers, as far as I have been informed. People have written more than 190 on me. There may be even more. People might not have gotten access to talk to me or to send me books. There are books, but people have been writing books on me. There is one book, The Creative World of Nandini Sahu. It's a book of 500 pages, and many scholars all over the world have contributed to that. And then Dialogues with Nandini Sahu. There is one from by Professor Tapan Basu from Delhi University. And then this Creative World of Nandini Sahu is by Dr. Vipin Kumar from Delhi University. So they have written books about me. There are many actually, if you Google. So even the critics, they write how from innocence to experience, from girlhood to maturity, I have been moving. So I think they have understood me very well. And as I said earlier, and now I would only repeat myself, folklore has humbled me as a writer. Yep.
Of course, it is natural for an author that has been writing for decades to evolve, to go into more depth, and for the soul to be more expressed. This is absolutely normal, and congratulations on these books that everybody has written about you. We have seen on Google as well. Absolutely
Yes.
adorable.
Yeah, I was very happy to
Congratulations.
see them. Right. Yes.
It is because you have touched the souls of people. That is why. So, as you said also, you have written extensively on folklore and alternative modernities, bridging indigenous wisdom and literary modernism. In your view,
Yes.
what is the role of folklore in re-establishing the moral and cultural memory of our civilization?
In folklore is a way of life. If somebody asks me define folklore in 2, 3 words, I would say it's a way of life. You know, so it's the heartbeat of a civilization, of a community. It's the collective memory of a people before history became text. Written history, documented history. Before that, there was oral culture. So that oral culture, which became a part of our memory culture, which we call Nemo studies or Nemo culture, Mnemo, Nemo culture. So that is related to folklore. Folklore has a moral compass, it has an ecological wisdom. If you look at the indigenous knowledge systems, the folk cuisine of many countries, not just India, if you look at the folk medicines, Ayurveda, Unani, and those medicines which are becoming a part of the peer reviewed medicines, the allopathic medicines, they are making researches on the folk medicines. One of my students of folklore is a doctor from Safdarjung Hospital, one of the biggest hospitals, and he showed me how in his research of allopathy, which is peer reviewed medicine, he has made use of references from Unani and Ayurveda and homeopathy. So he says that we haven't borrowed or taken anything from them directly, but by making that kind of research, we know what to do and what not to do. So those were kind of their research material. So folklore is emotional intelligence of any community. Creation of a folk mind is something that I emphasize in every folklore seminar. If you have a folk mind, like I have a folk mind, if you have a folk mind, then probably you will be more empathetic, more compassionate, you will understand inclusivity and flexibility in a better way. In the period of digital modernity and cultural amnesia, in the age of digital humanities, folklore reminds us about who we are and where we come from. I see folklore as an epistemic archiving system, one that can teach us sustainable living, eating healthy food, food that is close to nature, and then gender equality, spiritual ecology. To study folklore is to study the human condition in its most organic form. Folklore bridges the oral and the textual, the local and the global, and the sacred and the secular. You understand the ideas of sacred and profane and the unnecessary divide between the sacred and profane if you read folklore carefully. Folklore is not just about the past, folklore is the conscience of the present. Folklore is very contemporary, very present, and very much related to our life here and now. So, the poetry, the folklore, the research, and the administration, the creative writing, everything that I do, all of them connect me to humanity, and I think I become more human every single day the more I read the interesting and important books written by all of you.
Absolutely. The ever living fiber of every cell of society, and all connected into one unity. Perfectly said, and really wonderful thing that you are focused on that, on folklore. As a teacher, researcher, and institutional leader, what challenges and possibilities do you see in nurturing a generation that often drifts away from literature and the humanities?
The challenge is not disinterested but distraction. The modern generation is more distracted. Like they're talking to you, suddenly they will pick the phone and then they'll start looking at it. You are telling something interesting, something important. There is some debate going on. They are distracted. So it's not disinterest. They're not disinterested. They know a lot. Sometimes they know better than me. Better than our generation, but distraction. The younger generation is not devoid of curiosity. They have curiosity, but they're overwhelmed by maybe information. My father used to tell me knowledge is power. Now I tell my son the utilization of knowledge is power. How much you utilize the knowledge and how do you use this knowledge? Because in the age of internet, knowledge is at your doorstep. How do you utilize it? Because when we were children, for essay competitions, for debate competitions, for writing everything, we had to find a book. We used to go to the library, sit there for hours, search for the material. So knowledge was power for us. But these people just at the fraction of a second, they get the entire material in front of them. So how do they utilize this knowledge is power for them. The role of the educators is to transform information into insight. As a teacher, students will come to you with information. If you go to the history classroom and you start talking about Akbar the Great, they will tell you the entire generation of Akbar. So they come with information. How you convert this information into insight as a teacher is important. To show them that literature is not about the past, but it's about the presence of the past. So we have to integrate technology with humanities. Digital humanities is coming up in a big way as subjects. Even I'm going to introduce digital humanities in my university. We cannot shy away from technology. We can't say that I'm a poet, I'm a literature teacher. We have to understand technology, create digital humanities, read with empathy, think with reason, look at the NEP document, and then the possibility of the future lies in making literature a lived experience through storytelling, theater, translation, dialogue. And then when students realize that literature is life in language, they will return to literature finally. Yep.
I liked what you did. Took the quote of your father's as a basis, and you put into it the practicality as well. And yes, how you utilize this knowledge and information is the most important thing, and also to instill it into the next generation, into the grassroots. And this is exactly what you do there in your university. So wonderful. And finally, if you were to leave a message for young writers and scholars, one distilled from your decades of teaching, writing, and living through words, what would that message be?
Well, Irin, I really don't exactly know what should be my message to the younger generation. They're already doing so well. They know how to write. They are thinking very, very critically. They are doing very well. But yes, coming to my generation, if you ask me to advise a generation of our children, then maybe I would say that be honest, don't be a word juggler, and try to touch lives practically, going to people, helping them to get education, helping them to get livelihood, be a job creator rather than only thinking about how to make money through your writing. The world is not a perfect place, it definitely is imperfect. So don't be too critical about people who may be imperfect in their speech and writing. Maybe you can help them to write or rewrite it. And every time compose something, you are carrying the weight of your time. Like Alexander Pope had written somewhere that we think our fathers fools, so wise we grow. Our wiser children will no doubt think us so. So now when I look at my parents, I think, oh, they were so foolish. But our wiser children, my children and his generation, they might be thinking that we are so foolish. So actually, nobody is a fool. Everyone belongs to their own generation. You look at Toru Dutt's poem Sita and my poem Sita. Both are about Sita, but then her Sita is so different from mine because her Sita probably was docile. She followed Lord Sri Ram. Maybe she did what her generation expected her to do. Because Sita definitely is an imaginary character from a mythology. And my Sita is more contemporary, like you and me. We know how to belong. We know how to make the best use of the planet. We know how to love people and how to, go use the forest. Even Sita used the forest to her own credit. Her children got education there. She became a great cook and a great teacher in the Valmiki ashram. So every generation writes itself. So the younger generation, I would only say, please don't be critical of the older generation because we wrote or we have been writing what actually is expected from us. From so love for people, love for the planet, love for the possibilities and human spirit. Those should be the spirit of the younger generation, because sometimes I see that in the younger generation that kind of empathy and belongingness is missing. They are too competitive, aggressively promoting or publicizing something or other, some idea, some agenda, some book. Publicizing something or promoting something too aggressively doesn't help. A book should speak for itself. You don't need to really promote a book too aggressively. If your book touches the human heart, people will read it. So maybe that's my advice to the younger generations, that write carefully. Uh, People are using AI too much. Probably I should say that look at it, what you are doing, and develop more of sympathy and empathy and love for the world, the planet.
So be more critical, be practical, be of their era, and be authentic, just like you.
Yes. No, not really. I'm trying to grow every single day. I'm learning from you and Preet. I'm learning from everybody.
What a beautiful journey, a magnificent
Yes.
journey through literature, through translation, through teaching. You have crossed all these realms with such brilliance, with such devotion. And I'm sure that all our viewers have become wiser after this beautiful conversation with Professor Nandini Sahu. Very honored to have had you here today with us in Meet the Luminaries series.
Thank you so much, Irene. You have been too kind, such generous and kind words. And thank you, Preet, for having me here. I'm humbled. I'm glad that I could talk to you.
So glad that we had the chance to have you here in a program of the
Sure.
Writers Capital International Foundation. Thank you so much. Keep inspiring humanity, younger and older. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Namaskar.